I'm Brenna Myers, and I was 33 the week my own parents sold the only home I ever loved and forged my name to do it. I was 8,000 miles away on a bridge project when my neighbor texted me a photo. A red sold writer, bolted across a sign staked in my front lawn. My dad would later smirk and tell me my house paid for their fun. He had no idea what he had just put his signature next to, and what I found in the county records turned a family vacation into a criminal file. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where quiet people meet loud betrayals and walk out with their dignity and the receipts. If a calm woman with a folder of documents is your idea of justice, you are in the right place. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. People think structural engineers are cold. We are not. We just trust things that hold weight, and most people do not. I built my whole life that way, one verified load at a time, no shortcuts, no help I did not earn. The one place I let myself be soft was a small clapboard house on Mill Road, white with a green door. My grandfather, Walter Hale, bought it in 1971 and spent 50 years making it perfect with his own hands. He taught me to read a level before I could read a clock. When I graduated, he pressed his brass front door key into my palm and closed my fingers over it. A house is just a promise you keep to yourself, he said. I kept that key on my ring for 11 years. I keep it there still. Mill Road was not big. 2 bedrooms, a deep porch, a kitchen that smelled like sawdust and coffee no matter how many times I scrubbed it. But it was mine in a way nothing else in my family ever was. Chosen, not assigned. My mother got the china, my brother got the attention, I got the house. And for a while I thought that was the family finally getting something right. That week, the key felt heavier than usual in my pocket. I told myself it was the cold. It was not the cold. There was something my grandfather said that last summer that I would not understand for years, not until a stranger at a county recorder's office handed me a piece of paper with my own signature on it, and I knew for a fact I had never signed it. Walter died 14 months before any of this, at 84, in his sleep, in the bedroom he had painted 3 times trying to get the white right. The funeral was small. My mother cried the loudest and left the earliest. A week later, a lawyer named Harold Brandt called me into a paneled office downtown and slid a folder across the desk. I was 32, exhausted, mid-project, running on bad coffee and grief. He used words I half heard: irrevocable trust, successor trustee, beneficiary. I signed where he pointed. I remember thinking the house was mine now, and that was all I needed to know. Read this when you can breathe again, Brandt said, tapping the folder. I did not. I filed it in a drawer and went back to work, because work was the one thing that never asked me how I was holding up. That was my mistake, and I own it. I was the responsible one, the one who handled things. So when my mother offered to keep a spare key for upkeep, "You are never home, dear," I gave it to her without a second thought. When my father said he would watch the place while I traveled, I thanked him. I handed the people who resented me most a set of keys and a head start, and I called it being a good daughter. I had spent my whole life proving I could carry everything alone. It never once occurred to me that the people I trusted were measuring the house, room by room, for someone else. The porch swing was the first thing Walter built at that house, and the last thing he stopped using. He carved the wood himself, oak, and burned his initials into the armrest with a date, WH 1971. As a kid, I would sit on his lap there while he explained why a beam carries load and a person carries promises. The summer before he died, he was slower, but he still made it to the swing every evening. One night, he patted the seat and we rocked a while, and out of nowhere he said something I have turned over 1,000 times since. "This house will never go to anyone who did not earn it," he told me. I made sure. I laughed and asked what he meant. He just looked at the yard like he could see something I could not. "Lawyers are good for one thing," he said, "making sure people cannot take what is not theirs." I thought he was being dramatic. He was a carpenter who distrusted banks and loved paperwork, and I loved him, and I let it go. I did not know he had spent his last clear years with Harold Brandt building a fence no one could climb. The swing still hung there the week everything fell apart, and I keep thinking about how he had planned for a storm I could not even imagine yet. He knew his own daughter better than I knew my own mother. He just never said it out loud. He built it into the documents instead, and then he waited, patient as oak, to be proven right. My mother never forgave her own father for the will, and that is where all of this really starts. Diane Hale Myers is 60, and she has spent every one of those years certain she was owed more than she got. She was the daughter, the blood, and her father left the house to the granddaughter who fixed his gutters instead of to her. At the funeral, in the receiving line, she said it where I could hear. "That was Daddy's house," she told my aunt, dabbing her eyes. "It should have come to me." I let it slide. Grief makes people say things, I told myself. My brother Trent is 29 and has never once let a consequence reach him. He had a marketing job he quit, a girlfriend he charmed, and a credit balance my parents quietly refilled like a bird feeder. My father Roger, 62, ran the house on one principle: keep the peace, which always meant give Trent whatever stopped him sulking. "Brenna is fine," Dad would say, waving me off like a settled bill. "She does not need anything." I built that reputation myself, I will admit it. I never asked, so they decided I never would. They looked at my steady salary and my paid-off car and my quiet life, and saw not a person but a resource that had not been tapped yet. And the whole time, my mother was looking at the one thing I loved and seeing something that should have been hers. I should have heard the warning in that. I was too busy being the daughter who never caused problems to notice the one who did. The project came in March. A cable-stayed bridge retrofit outside Lisbon, 11 weeks on site, the kind of assignment that makes a career. My firm needed someone who would not blink at long hours and longer flights. I said yes before my boss finished the sentence. I was good at leaving. Leaving was just another load I knew how to carry. The week before I flew out, I did what I always did. I made everyone else's life easier. I set the bills on autopay. I told my parents where the water shutoff was. I left a list on the fridge in my neat block letters, the way I label drawings, because if a thing is written down, it cannot go wrong. That is what I believed. Engineers trust documentation the way other people trust prayer. My mother walked the house with me that afternoon, running her hand along the banister Walter sanded by hand. "Do not worry about a thing," she said. "We will take such good care of it." I remember being touched. I remember thinking maybe losing Walter had softened something in her. I hugged her at the door and felt, for one stupid warm second, like I had the kind of family that shows up. 11 weeks. I would be back before the maples turned. I gave my father the alarm code so he could check the pipes. I gave my mother the spare. I handed them the house key by key and flew across an ocean, proud of myself for being so easy to love. They did not need the water shut off. They needed the deed, and they already knew exactly where it was. The first odd thing came 3 days before I left, and I filed it under nothing. My mother asked, too casually, where Walter's house papers were kept. I told her Brant had the originals and I had copies in the drawer. She nodded like it did not matter. It mattered. Then Trent, who never called me, called me. He wanted to talk about the family's finances, a phrase that in my family has only ever meant someone wanted money. I told him I was slammed and we would talk when I got back. He went quiet in a way that should have worried me. The week I landed in Portugal, his social feed bloomed with screenshots of a resort in the Maldives, overwater bungalows, a private chef, a price tag I could read between the lines. "Big things coming," he captioned it. My brother had not had a job in 7 months. I remember frowning at my phone in a hotel that smelled like sea salt and thinking, where is he getting that? Then a colleague needed me on the deck for attention reading and I forgot the question. There was one more thing. A text from an unknown number, forwarded by my mother without comment. A realtor asking if the owner had given more thought to listing the Mill Road property. I texted back a single word. No. My mother replied with a thumbs up and a heart. I thought the matter was closed. I had just told a stranger no to a thing that, unknown to me, had already been done. The heart emoji was not agreement, it was a goodbye. Lisbon swallowed me whole, the way good work always does. 11 weeks compressed into days that started before dawn and ended over drawings. I was happy, in the narrow way I knew how to be happy, useful, exhausted, and far from anyone who wanted something from me. I called home on Sundays. The calls got shorter. My mother was busy with church things. My father was around. Trent never came to the phone. I chalked it up to the time difference and my own bad habit of letting silence feel like peace. One night, jet-lagged and wide awake, I sat on the edge of a hotel bed and turned my keyring over in my hands. The brass key caught the lamplight, worn smooth by Walter's thumb and then mine. I thought about the last thing I did before the airport, how I had locked the green door, tested the knob twice the way he taught me, and stood a second too long on the porch. The swing had moved a little in the wind, WH 1971 catching the last of the light, and I had thought, I will restain the railing when I am back. Such a small, sure little plan. I had no way to know that while I slept 8 time zones away, my family was sitting at a kitchen table with a stranger, a stack of forms, and a pen, deciding that the house would not be there when I got home. I locked the door. I just did not lock the people I had handed the keys to. That was the last night the house was simply, quietly, mine. Week 6, a call finally rattled me. I phoned on a Tuesday, off schedule, because a permit delay had freed my evening. My mother picked up on the 9th ring, breathless, with voices behind her. Now is not great, honey, she said. I asked who was over. Just some people about the yard, she said. We are handling it. Do not you worry about a thing. That phrase again. Handling it. In my family, we are handling it, had always meant a decision I was not invited to. I asked her flat out if everything was okay with the house. There was a pause I could have driven a truck through. Everything is wonderful, she said, too bright. You focus on your bridge. Then she hung up before I could answer. I stood on the hotel balcony with the phone warm against my ear and that old engineer's itch crawling up my spine, the one that says a number does not add up and you had better find out why before something falls. I texted Trent. Nothing. I texted my father. Nothing. I told myself families get busy, that I was being paranoid, that 11 weeks was almost up, and I would sort whatever it was over coffee on my own porch. I almost believed it. I went to bed. And 2 days later, my neighbor, a retired schoolteacher named Cora who had watched me grow up, sent a single photo with 3 words underneath that turned my blood to cold water. The photo was of my front lawn. The 3 words were, "Is this real?" I opened the photo standing in line for bad hotel coffee, and the cup never made it to my mouth. There was my house. White clapboard, green door, Walter's swing just visible on the porch. And driven into the lawn where my grandfather used to plant tomatoes was a real estate sign, professional, glossy, with a bright red rider bolted across the top. Sold. Not for sale, not listing soon. Sold. The word sat there in the grass like it had every right to be. I read Cora's message 3 times. Is this real? I typed back with hands that had stopped feeling like mine. I am in Portugal. I did not list it. Are you sure that is my house? The reply came fast. Honey, the moving truck was here Saturday. Your mother was directing it. A moving truck. My things. My grandfather's things. The level he taught me to read. The kitchen that smelled like sawdust. Gone into a truck while a stranger's sign claimed the yard. I want to tell you I screamed. I did not. Something in me went very still and very quiet, the way it does on a job site the second before everyone realizes the load is wrong. I set the coffee down. I walked back to my room. And I opened my laptop, because whatever this was, it would have left a paper trail. And paper trails are the one language my family never learned to speak, and I never stopped speaking. A house cannot be sold by people who do not own it. I knew that the way I know steal. So either I was wrong about who owned my house, or someone had lied to a stranger with my name. I called my mother before I called the county, because some childish part of me still wanted there to be an explanation. She answered on the second ring this time. Eager. Brenna, how is Lisbon? Like nothing, like the world had not tilted. "Mom," I said, very evenly, "why is there a sold sign on Mill Road?" The silence had texture. Then she laughed, light and brittle. "Oh, that, we meant to tell you. It all happened so fast." So fast. 11 weeks of we are handling it had happened so fast. "Tell me what happened," I said. "Honey, the market was perfect. We got a wonderful price. Your brother needed—" She caught herself. "The family needed this. You were never even here. That house was just sitting empty." I asked the only question that mattered. "Who signed the sale?" Another pause. Then, brightly, deflecting, "Do not get bogged down in details. It is done. It is wonderful." In the background I heard Trent's voice, careless and loud. "Tell her the villa has 2 pools. 2 pools. My grandfather's house had become 2 pools in the Maldives. And my mother, 60 years old, said the thing she had been rehearsing since the funeral. The thing she truly believed. It should have come to me anyway, Brenna. I am just taking back what was mine." I did not argue. Arguing with my mother had never moved a single inch of ground in my life. Instead I said, calm as a closing door, "Okay, Mom. Enjoy the trip." And I hung up, and I opened the county recorder's website, and I started to read. Here is the part people never expect. I did not get on a plane. I wanted to. Every cell in me wanted to fly home and stand in that yard and pull the sign up with my bare hands. But I had signed a contract too, a real one, and the bridge had a load test scheduled that only I was certified to sign off. 12 more days. If I walked, the project slipped a month, and my name went on nothing. So I did the harder thing, the colder thing, the thing that would actually work. I stayed, and I built a case from 8 time zones away. Engineers do not panic. We gather data. I pulled up the county recorder's public portal at 2 in the morning, coffee going cold, and I searched the parcel number I had memorized since the day Walter walked me through it. The record loaded. And there it was. A warranty deed, recorded 6 weeks earlier, transferring the Mill Road property to a couple named Prescott. Grantor, Brenna L. Myers. My name. My house. A sale I had never heard of, signed by a woman who was on a different continent. I sat very still and read it 4 times, and each time the same impossible sentence stared back. I had sold my own house while asleep in a Lisbon hotel. Which meant one of 2 things. Either I was losing my mind, or someone had put my name on a document I never touched. Let me pause here a second, because I know some of you are watching this and feeling your own stomach drop. If you have ever been the dependable one, the one everybody assumes is fine, the one nobody checks with before deciding your life, you know this exact cold quiet. Stay with me. It gets worse before it gets right, and the way it gets right is worth it. Subscribe so the next part finds you. I read that deed the way I read a failed inspection report, slowly, looking for the one detail that explains the collapse. The closing date jumped out first. April 19th. On April 19th, I had been standing on a bridge deck outside Lisbon in a hard hat, with 30 witnesses, and a time-stamped photo of myself holding a tension gauge. I had not signed anything in Portugal, but a hotel folio and a load certificate. So the signature on that deed, the one that read Brenna L. Myers in a looping hand that was not mine, was a lie pressed into the public record. Forgery. The word arrived quietly and completely, the way the right answer does. Then I looked at the notary block. Every deed needs one. A notary public who swears the person signing is who they say they are, and stood there, and signed in front of them. The stamp on my forged deed belonged to a notary commissioned in our county. The name under the seal was Renee Calloway. My cousin, Renee. Diane's niece, 41, perpetually one missed paycheck from disaster, who got her notary commission 2 years ago and never seemed to use it. She had sworn, under her official seal, that she watched me sign a document I was 8,000 miles from. I did not feel rage yet. Rage takes energy, and I needed all of mine for the work. I felt something flatter and harder, like a beam locking into place. I requested a certified copy of the deed, paid the fee, and waited. because a screenshot is an accusation, a certified document is a weapon, and I was done bringing my voice to a fight my family had already turned into paper. The certified copy arrived at my hotel 9 days later, forwarded by my office, embossed with the county seal. I waited until evening to open it, when the site was quiet and I could think. I slid the document out and laid it flat on the desk under the lamp, and there it was. Official now. Raised seal and all. The warranty deed that gave my grandfather's house to strangers. I made myself look at the signature line. Brenna L. Myers, in someone's careful forgery of my hand. Whoever did it had studied me. The B was close. The little flat-topped R I make was wrong. I have signed my name on 10,000 drawings. I know my own hand the way I know my own face, and this was a stranger wearing it. Beneath it, dated April 19th, sat Renee's notary stamp and her signature, swearing she had witnessed it. I opened my passport on the desk beside the deed. Lisbon entry stamp, March 11th. No exit until June. I laid my site badge log next to that. April 19th. First scan 6:47 in the morning. Last scan 7:12 at night. Portugal. 3 pieces of paper, side by side under a hotel lamp, telling one clean story a child could follow. I could not have signed that deed, and the woman who swore I did was lying. I photographed all 3 together, time-stamped, and emailed them to myself in 2 accounts. Then I sat back. I finally understood what my grandfather meant about lawyers and the things people cannot take. I just needed to find out if the fence he built was still standing. First thing in the morning, I called Harold Brandt. Brandt remembered me before I finished my name. Walter's granddaughter, he said. The engineer. He talked about you constantly. I told him everything in order, the way you brief an inspector, the sold sign, the recorded deed, my forged signature, Renee's stamp, my passport. He was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice had changed, sharpened. Brenna, he said. Do you remember what you signed in my office after the funeral? I admitted I had not read it. I had been a mess. He did not scold me. Your grandfather did not leave you that house in his will, he said. He put it in an irrevocable trust 3 years before he died. The house is owned by the trust. You are the beneficiary, and you are the successor trustee. I sat down. What does that mean for the sale? I asked. It means, Brandt said slowly, that your parents sold something they never owned. The house was never theirs. It was not even yours to sell outright. It belongs to the trust, and you control the trust. Whatever they signed as people with no authority over that property at all. I thought of Walter on the porch swing, the oak warm under us, WH 1971 catching the light. I made sure. He had carved that date half a century ago, but the trust he built quietly near the end, when he must have finally let himself see what was coming. He had known. He had sat in this lawyer's office while my mother thought he was just a stubborn old man, and he had quietly made it impossible for her to do exactly what she had now done. There is more, Brandt said. And you are going to want to be sitting down for the part about the trust's protective clause. Brandt explained it the way Walter would have liked, plainly, with the law underneath. A deed with a forged signature, he said, is generally treated as void from the very beginning, in most states. Not voidable. Void. It conveys nothing, even to an innocent buyer who paid full price and knew nothing. The Prescotts think they own that house, he said. Legally, they likely never did. A forger cannot pass title because your family never had title to pass. The remedy was a sequence, not a shouting match. File a notice called a lease pendens to flag the disputed title on the public record so no one could resell or refinance. Then a quiet title action to have a judge confirm the trust as owner and cancel the forged deed. Then a claim to trace the sale money, a constructive trust, he called it, to recover what they had spent. And then, almost as an afterthought that was not one, the protective clause. Walter had instructed Brandt to write a forfeiture provision into the estate plan. Any beneficiary who tried to take trust property by fraud would forfeit every cent of their own interest. My mother and brother were each set to inherit from a separate cash trust. By forging that deed, Brant said carefully, they had likely triggered the very clause designed to stop them. I listened to all of it without saying a word. When he finished, he asked what I wanted to do. I looked out at the Lisbon dark and thought about how my mother had spent 60 years wanting to be loud and right. I do not want to fight them, I said. I want to file. That was the whole plan. No screaming match, no confrontation in a driveway, just documents, in order, doing what documents do. I would let the paper say everything I never had to. I landed 11 days later on a gray Thursday, signed the bridge off clean, and drove straight from the airport to Mill Road without going home first, because I did not have a home to go to anymore, and I needed to see that with my own eyes. The sign was still there. Sold. The Red Ryder weathered now, a smaller realtor's placard added below it with a name and number. There was a dumpster in the driveway. Through the front window I could see the kitchen had been gutted. Walter's cabinets ripped out, drywall dust where the sawdust smell used to live, the Prescotts already remaking the house I had loved into a house they had paid for in good faith. The porch swing was still up. WH 1971. Weathered, swaying a little in the wind, the one thing they had not gotten around to throwing away. I sat in my car across the street for a long time. I still had the brass key on my ring. I took it out and held it and, almost without deciding to, I walked up and tried it in the green door. It still fit. The lock my grandfather installed in 1971 still turned for his key. I could have walked right in. Instead, I turned it back, slid the key off my ring, and put it in my coat pocket where it would be safe. Not yet. Walking in now would be the dramatic thing, the thing my mother would do. I was going to do the patient thing. I drove to a hotel by the highway, spread my documents across the bed, and called Harold Brant to tell him I was home and ready to file. My parents did not know I was back, so when I knocked on their door Friday evening, my mother's face did something complicated: delight, then calculation, then a careful welcome. "Brenna, you should have called." She hugged me. I let her. Trent was on the couch, tanned from the Maldives, scrolling. My father sat in his recliner like a man who had won something. They had done it. They had sold my house, funded a vacation, and were settling in to enjoy the spoils, and the only thing that could ruin it had just walked through the door, and they still thought I was the daughter who never caused problems. "Sit, sit," my mother fussed. "How is the bridge?" I did not sit. I asked, quietly, "Who sold my house?" The room cooled. My mother started her speech. The market, the opportunity, the family needing this. I let her run out. Then my father, 62 years old, leaned back in his chair, looked at me with a little curl at the corner of his mouth, and said the sentence he will regret for the rest of his life. "Your house paid for their fun, sweetheart." He said it like a man tipping a waiter, like generosity. Trent snorted from the couch without looking up. My mother had the grace to glance away. And I smiled. A real one, small and certain. Because my father had just confessed in front of 3 witnesses that he knew exactly whose house it was and sold it anyway. I did not say what I knew. Not yet. I just let him smirk at a fire he could not see, and I said mildly, "Is that right?" And I drove away while they were still congratulating themselves. The Prescotts deserved better than what my family did to them, and I want you to know I never forgot that. They were a young couple, a nurse and a high school teacher, who had scraped together everything for a first house and spent it on a beautiful lie. So before I filed anything that would land on them like a falling beam, I knocked on the door of my own former home and introduced myself. I watched the wife's face go from polite to pale as I explained, gently, with the certified deed in my hand, that the people who sold them the house had never owned it, that the signature was forged, that a notice was about to appear on the title. "We have title insurance," her husband said, gripping the doorframe. "Good," I told him. "You are going to need it, and it is going to protect you. This is not your fault. You did everything right. The people who lied to you are the ones who will pay." I left them my lawyer's number and Brant's, because the kindest thing I could do was point them at the truth fast. Then I did the cold, correct thing. Brant filed the Ellis pendants that afternoon, a public notice, stamped into the county record, declaring the Mill Road title disputed and under litigation. The instant it recorded, the house froze. It could not be resold. It could not be refinanced. The Prescotts could not be evicted into a worse situation, and my family could not paper over what they had done. One document, quietly filed, and the whole scheme stopped moving. My mother found out the way everyone finds out. She got a phone call. And then she called me, and for the first time in my life, she was the one who sounded afraid. I did not take my mother's call. I let it go to voicemail, then a second, then a third, each one climbing from confusion to anger to that wet, performed grief she had used my whole life. I saved them all. Not to play them, I had promised myself I would win this on documents, not recordings, but because a frightened person admits things, and I wanted Brant to hear the timeline in her own panic. Meanwhile, the case built itself out of facts. Brant brought in a forensic document examiner, a calm woman who had testified in 40 fraud cases. She compared the deed signature to 15 genuine samples of mine and wrote, in language as flat as a ruler, that the questioned signature was not authored by the same hand. She pulled Renee's notary journal, the record a notary in our state is required to keep, and found that the entry for April 19th was missing entirely. No log, no record of the witnessing Renee had sworn happened. The closing file also held a power of attorney supposedly signed by me, authorizing my father to act for me, dated while I was in Lisbon. Forged, too. The lie had needed a second lie to stand up, and now both were lying on Brant's desk. Let me stop here for just a moment. People keep asking me why I did not scream, why I did not post it all online, why I stayed so calm. Here is the truth I would give my younger self. A raised voice fades by morning, but a recorded document does not fade at all. If you are the kind of person who would rather win quietly and permanently than loudly and never, you and I would get along just fine. Subscribe, and let us finish this together. Because the family meeting was coming, and they thought they had called it to make me back down. My mother's strategy, when fear set in, was the only one she had ever had: make me the villain and cry until I folded. The texts came in waves. I was tearing the family apart. I was selfish, ungrateful, just like my father always. No, she did not finish that one. Trent called once, not to apologize, but to panic. You are going to put our parents in jail over a house, he hissed. Do you know how that makes you look? I told him I had not put anyone anywhere. They had done that themselves, with a pen. My father left a single message, low and threatening, the recliner gone from his voice. You do this. You are not my daughter anymore. We are done. I sat with that one a while. Then I realized something almost funny. He was offering to cut me off from a family that had already sold my home to strangers. There was nothing left to cut. The thing they kept missing in all their noise was that I was not angry the way they needed me to be. Angry people negotiate. Angry people can be guilted, exhausted, worn down until they drop it. I was not dropping anything. I was just waiting for the paperwork to mature, the way concrete cures, on its own schedule, regardless of who is yelling at it. Come to the family meeting, my mother finally texted. We will talk this out like adults. Sunday. Your father is grilling. A family meeting to pressure me into silence, with witnesses, in the backyard with Walter's swing. I texted back one word. Yes. They thought they were setting a trap. I let them set the table for mine. Before Sunday, two things landed that turned my folder from a defense into a verdict. First, Brant confirmed the protective clause. He had reviewed the trust line by line with a second attorney to be certain, and they agreed. By orchestrating a fraudulent transfer of trust property, my mother and Trent had almost certainly triggered the forfeiture provision Walter built. The cash each was set to inherit, close to $40,000 apiece, would likely pass instead to the trust's alternate beneficiary, which, my grandfather being my grandfather, was a charitable purpose he had named years ago, and I will get to. Second, the county's real estate fraud unit took the case. Brant had submitted the forged deed, the forged power of attorney, the examiner's report, Renee's missing notary log, and my passport, and a detective named Alvarez called me personally. "Ma'am," she said, "this is about as clean a forgery case as I have seen. We are moving forward." Forgery. Uttering a forged instrument. Notary fraud, which would cost Renee her commission at minimum. I thanked her and hung up, and sat in the quiet of my hotel room, with everything I needed spread on the bed in neat stacks, the way I lay out drawings before a build. I did not feel triumphant. I felt steady. Sunday I would drive to my parents' backyard, where they would be waiting to wear me down, and I would set my folder on the picnic table and let 12 weeks of patience speak in a voice none of them could shout over. I called Brant one last time. "Can you be on standby Sunday afternoon?" I asked. He said he would keep his phone close. Then I ironed a shirt and went to bed, because tomorrow I had a family to meet. Sunday came warm and bright, the kind of afternoon that makes a backyard look like a greeting card. My father was at the grill in his good apron, performing normalcy. My mother had set out lemonade and a plate of the lemon bars she only makes when she wants something. The extended family had been summoned to witness my reasonableness. 2 aunts, an uncle, a cousin or two, Renee herself in the corner looking like she had not slept in a month. And there, at the edge of the patio, hung Walter's swing, WH 1971 burned into the oak, swaying empty in the breeze like it was saving a seat. I had asked the Prescotts to come at 3. They arrived quietly and stood near the gate, unsure, the nurse holding her husband's hand. My mother's smile flickered when she saw them. "Brenna, who?" "I invited them," I said. "They are part of this." I set my folder on the picnic table, closed, and accepted a glass of lemonade I did not drink. My father turned from the grill, spatula in hand, that same little smirk warming up. "Glad you came to your senses," he said. I had not said a word about my senses, but I let him think it, because the best way to disarm people who expect a fight is to look, for one more minute, like the daughter who never causes problems. The swing creaked behind me. I almost felt Walter sit down. My mother opened, because she always opens. She stood at the head of the table like a chairwoman and addressed the yard more than me. "We are family," she said, voice trembling on cue. "Families make hard choices together. Brenna has been overseas. She does not understand what we were dealing with, and now she has gotten lawyers involved over a misunderstanding about a house." A misunderstanding. One aunt nodded, primed. "It was Daddy's house," my mother went on, and there it was again, the line she truly believed. "It should have come to me. I only took back what was mine." My father set down his spatula and leaned on the table, and he wanted the room, so he repeated his favorite sentence to the crowd, smiling, like a man who knew he had already won. "The house paid for the trip," he announced. "Brenna has done fine for herself. She did not need it. We did." Trent, emboldened, added from his lawn chair, "It is just a house." I let all of it land. I let the aunts murmur and the uncle frown and the whole jury my mother had assembled get a good look at the family's version of events. Then I opened the folder. The yard went quiet at the small, ordinary sound of a cardboard cover lifting. Funny, the things that silence a room. Not a shout. A folder. I did not stand. I did not raise my voice. I laid the documents out on the picnic table one at a time, face up, the way Detective Alvarez would, the way Walter laid out his tools. "This is the deed that sold the house," I said. "Recorded April 19th. I set down the next page. "This is my signature on it." I set down a stack of 15 real ones beside it. "And these are mine. The forensic examiner says the one on the deed was written by someone else." My mother's mouth opened. I kept going, mild as a teacher. "This is the notary stamp that swears I signed in person, in this county, on April 19th. Down went the next sheet. "This is my passport, Lisbon, Portugal. I entered March 11th and did not leave until June." Down went my badge log. "This says I scanned onto a bridge in Portugal at 6:47 that morning." I looked up finally at Renee in the corner, who had gone the color of ash. There is no entry in your notary journal for that day, Renee. The law says there has to be. There is not. Nobody moved. My father's smirk had curdled into something stiff. There was also a power of attorney, I went on, supposedly signed by me, letting Dad act for me, forged too. So we have 2 forged documents, a false notarization, and a sale of a house none of you ever owned. I closed my hands on the table, calm as still water. Because it was never yours. It was in Grandpa's trust. And I am the trustee. My mother's composure broke first. Not into tears, into fury. The real thing under the performance finally showing its face. How can you sit there? She shouted, half rising, lemonade sloshing. We are your family. How are you so calm? The whole yard held its breath, and I gave her the only answer I had, the one I had been carrying across an ocean and back, quiet and complete. Because the house you sold was never yours to sell. I let it sit there in the warm air. Then I told them the rest. Evenly, the way you read a verdict you did not write. The forged deed was void. It had never transferred anything, which meant the Prescotts, standing pale by the gate, had never legally owned it either, and would be made whole by their title insurance and by the people who lied to them. A lease pendants was already on the record. The house could not be sold again. A quiet title action would return it to the trust. The money from the sale was being traced and recovered. The county's fraud unit had the case. And Grandpa's trust had a clause he wrote years ago, sitting with his lawyer, because he knew exactly who his daughter was, that stripped the inheritance from anyone who tried to steal from it. You did not just lose the house you stole, I said. You triggered the thing he built to stop you. You disinherited yourselves. Then the backyard came apart, and I sat in the middle of it like the eye of a storm I had seen coming for weeks. My mother went straight to the performance. The tears arrived on schedule. The wet voice. The after everything I sacrificed for you. The blame poured in every direction but her own. My father stood up so fast his chair fell, shouting that I was a snake, that no real daughter does this, that I would regret it, the recliner king with nothing left to sit on. Trent had gone gray. How much of the money do they want back? He kept saying, to no one. I spent it. I already spent it. We cannot. The math of his vacation was catching up with him in real time, and a constructive trust does not care that the villa had 2 pools. The aunts who had come to judge me were staring at my mother now, recalculating 60 years of stories. And Renee just cracked. She came off the wall and grabbed my arm, and for 1 second her face was honest in a way no one else's was. I just needed the money, Brenna, she whispered. Diane said it was fine. She said the house was really hers. I have 2 kids, and I just needed the money. I looked at her, and I will not pretend I felt nothing. She was the only one telling the truth. But truth told too late is still a forged seal, and her signature had helped steal my grandfather's house. I know, I said quietly, and took my arm back. I am sorry it was you they used. That was all the mercy I had, and it was not absolution. I gathered my documents back into the folder, squared the edges, and stood. The yelling kept going behind me. It had nothing more to take from me, so I let it. I walked over to the Prescotts at the gate and told them again, gently, that they would be all right. That Brant would call Monday. That none of this was their doing. The nurse was crying. I am so sorry about your house, she said. And she meant it. Which was more than anyone in that yard had managed. I told her it had always been more than a house, and left it there. Then I did the one thing I had driven home from Portugal to do. I crossed the lawn to the sold sign staked where Walter used to grow tomatoes, wrapped both hands around the post, and pulled it out of the ground in one clean motion. Dirt scattered across the grass. I laid the sign flat in the dumpster on top of my grandfather's broken cabinets. From the patio, the swing creaked, WH 1971 catching the late sun, and I let myself look at it. Then I took the brass key out of my coat pocket, the one Walter pressed into my palm at graduation, the one that still fit the door, and closed my fist around it the way he had closed mine. I will see you in court, if you would like, I said to my family, without heat. Otherwise, I will see myself home. And I walked out the gate, key in my pocket, and did not look back to watch them realize the daughter who never caused problems had quietly, completely, and legally won. The legal part took the better part of 2 years, because real justice moves at the speed of paperwork, not television. The quiet title action ended with a judge canceling the forged deed and confirming the Mill Road house as property of Walter Hale's trust, with me as trustee. The Prescotts were made whole, their title insurer covered their loss, and went after my family for every dollar of the sale price, joined by Brandt's constructive trust claim. Most of Trent's vacation came back out of my parents' retirement account. Since Trent himself had nothing, the rest became a judgment that will follow all 3 of them for years. The forfeiture clause held. My mother and brother lost the inheritance they had been counting on, close to $40,000 each, and it passed where Walter had always meant the remainder to go. The criminal case ran on its own track. My parents each took an early plea to felony forgery rather than risk a trial, and were sentenced to probation, restitution, and the kind of public record that does not wash off. Renee lost her notary commission and took a plea of her own. I asked Detective Alvarez to note in the file that she had cooperated, which was the last bit of mercy I had in me, and more than she had earned. I never spoke to my father again. My mother sent one letter, 4 pages, that managed to apologize for nothing and ask for help on the last page. I did not answer it. People ask if I feel guilty, watching my family come apart. I tell them the truth. I did not take anything from them. They reached for something that was not theirs, and my grandfather had bolted it down. I moved into Mill Road that fall. I rebuilt the kitchen myself mostly, with Walter's hand tools and a contractor for the parts I could not do alone. I sanded the porch swing down to clean oak and reburned nothing. WH 1971 was right where he left it, and it stays. The brass key hangs on a hook by the green door now, where I can see it every time I come home. I test the knob twice out of habit. It always holds. They thought a quiet woman was a safe one to rob, and they were exactly half right. I was quiet, and I was never once safe to rob. Here is where Walter's money went, the inheritance my mother and brother forfeited. Years ago, he had named a charitable remainder in his trust, and when they triggered the clause, it funded what I turned into the Walter Hale Memorial Scholarship for kids going into the trades and engineering, the first in their family kids who fix gutters and read levels and earn every door they ever walk through. The first 2 recipients started this year. One wants to build bridges. I keep my grandfather's brass key on my ring the day I sign each award, because a house is just a promise you keep to yourself, and so, it turns out, is a name. That is my story. One forged signature, one grandfather who saw it coming, and one folder that said everything I never had to shout. If this reminded you to actually read the documents with your name on them, do it this week. And if someone you love is the dependable one everyone takes for granted, send this their way. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.